There's some big news in the world of CSGO right now. And on Wednesday, Colin, Dan, Devin, and I tackled all of that in our latest episode of Clouted on Twitch. And that means we talked to Astralis. Glaive is out, Jugi's in, but he's really struggling. And now we're hearing that Xyp9x might be out for an undetermined amount of time. And that leaves one big question. Can a team like Astralis handle this much roster shuffling?
As we were preparing for this show, something that has nothing to do with Olaf or KRB, but has something to do with Astralis, just broke some news. So I want to jump right into that if that's cool with you.
Yeah, that's cool.
Get it.
Cool. Go ahead.
Devin says, let's get it.
That
means I can do it.
Yeah.
So according to DK, Jarek DK Lewis of Double Tap, Xyp9x is taking a leave. And this is mind-blowing news because what we were also going to talk about on the show, obviously was Glaive's leave of absence. Now, his was due to burnout, ostensibly like medical issues. He was going to take several months off. We know they're doing really well in major qualifications. The major, if it happens at all, is not going to be till much later in the year. So that made sense. This Xyp9x thing kind of comes out of left field.
Right.
According to, DK's sources, Sonic is filling in for him. We know that Esatog is not part of the roster yet because of the agreement they had with Heroic. And according to Nell, Astralis also reached out allegedly to Alex on Vitality to have him jump into Astralis. So all of this together tells me that this situation is not exactly planned.
Yeah, that's the thing about this, right? So, obviously, you already mentioned, right, this is coming on the heels of a lot of players, including Glaive going on, leaves of absence from their teams for those reasons, a lot of them citing health issues, burnout, that kind of stuff. But, my first reaction to this, my gut reaction was, I know the major is a while away. It's, November now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And it's just boy, if this is actually, the end or whatever, or they just don't make it back in time for the major, it is going to be a very, disappointing end to this, to the narrative around Astralis, right? Where it's just they didn't have the full team, and then they didn't do well, and then they fall off, and you know how esports fans' memories are sometimes, where you're not good for a week, you're just not good anymore, you're washed immediately.
The thing I'll say about that is that this is, if there's a time to take a leave of this kind, it's now.
Mm-hmm.
During the COVID crisis, there's a lot less events, nothing's on land. Astralis just finished first in the ESL Road to Rio. If you're going to take a sabbatical and prepare for when things are back to normal, now is the right time, right?
For sure.
So I think in that regard, it's not ready to hit the panic button yet. You also spoke a little bit about the results of Astralis, after this change, and we don't know what's going on with Xyp9x, but in terms of Yugi playing for Glaive, we do have some data on that.
Yugi's here on top of the trains, and even just letting go of Crouch would give him the view to back Ivy. They're going to boost. He's not seen it. He's not spotted it. Yugi can't tell, and Kaney's gotten 2 kills from atop the train. It's just Device in another clutch hit for Astralis.
What I mean to highlight is that Yugi is either at the very bottom or very near the bottom, ratings-wise, in the server in all of those series. So it's not exactly like a light the world on fire start. Now, he just walked into the most well-oiled machine in Counter-Strike history, so I'm certainly not expecting him to become the new breakout star of the team. However, I hope that his performance improves as we move forward without Glaive.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
There's a kind of an interesting comment in the chat where someone's saying that burnout has become way too normalized. We've talked about this for years, right? Esports is it's a grueling lifestyle. There's no sectioned off season like if you're an NBA star, right? So these guys are really doing this day in and day out all year round. With Glaive in particular, Astralis set themselves up for this. So, I mean, at least from my perspective, it seems like they're doing everything they can to be able to position themselves for that major, because they're acknowledging that, hey, look, you can't just run people into the ground like this, because they'll burn out. That's just the reality of esports, right? Also, there's precedent for this in other esports, right? Even back to the beginnings of Overwatch, there were players that subbed in for specific maps or to play specific characters. Even as far up as the Overwatch League, there were maps where Pine would play for the New York Excelsior because they wanted him to play McCree or wanted him to play Widow.
Finds himself in Pine's crosshairs right there. And they continue to get, he's so aggro on this McCree. He rolls in, somersaults in. That's another 3-kill life for Pine.
Okay, so in the span of 25 seconds, he gets the dead-eye!
Overwatch is a little unique in that these different characters require such different skill sets to play, and CSGO's not necessarily the same way. And there's certainly something to be said about the amount of cohesiveness you get by running a 5-person roster. That the reality is that, you know, it's difficult to replicate playing with the same 4 guys every single time out. But I mean, literally across sports as well, you see this world where, you know, you have 6 men off the bench who specializes in having a 3-point shot, or specializes in defense when you're playing against LeBron James or whatever. Like, it's not an alien concept to have a cohesive roster that's larger than 5 players.
I think, like you said, Colin, right? I also probably wouldn't be surprised if teams have these 7-man rosters, and then I wouldn't be surprised if TOs more and more make concessions to have these 7-man rosters be like tactically useful, not just in a way of like reducing burnout and having people able to like switch in as a like pinch player, like, hey, you're going to play this tournament, this guy's going to sit on the bench to recover for the major next week or something. But like, I do think that you're going to probably end up seeing stuff, maybe not in specifically CSGO, maybe the pushback will be too severe from CSGO, but I do think at some point, some esport is going to come along and say like, okay, we're going to let you sub in players at a halftime, we're going to let you sub in players, you know, maybe even between rounds or something, just to create this idea of having a deep bench and rewarding players for specialized skills.
When Astralis first announced that they were doing the 6th and then eventually 7th man lineup, my first reaction was like, it felt like one of those things that's been around for years, but it's like a new thing. You know what I mean? Like, it feels like we should have had this already. Do you know what I mean? And Astralis is setting this precedent, and I would not be surprised if we saw more orgs doing this down the road, you know? However you feel about them, the CSGO Players Union or Association made that statement saying they were reaching out to orgs to talk to them about these specific issues, right? Burnout and physical health issues, mental health issues, all that kind of stuff. So it'd be interesting to see if anything comes from that.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, obviously they're like more or less like an advocacy group, I think. So it's not as if they can strong arm anyone into doing anything, but the top, you know, like the teams that we've been speaking about, funny enough, are, you know, really professional organizations. I mean, Astralis, you know, above all else, but obviously FaZe Clan and North is a you know, in terms of professionalism, a top tier organization. So you got to believe, and I know in Astralis's case this is true, they all understand burnout and they all understand the consequences from that, and they all have the best mental and physical health of their players in mind. Regarding Olafmeister, though, on a serious note, obviously when I saw it, I was shocked. And why was I shocked? Just because I'm so used to seeing that man now in a FaZe Clan jersey, but just playing CSGO in general. Now, he hasn't had the best year or so, even beyond that, you know, on the server, to be frank with you. There's been a lot of inconsistencies. He's had some, you know, performances that are below what he was able to offer before, and he knows that. Everybody knows that, right? And he's also had some bright spots. Not to say that he's washed or anything like that. Man, I love the idea that FaZe is not a retirement home for great players, but a sort of like a final destination for players who have earned their stripes. I love that idea.
It's Valhalla.
Take him out to the barn, you know?
No, it's not taking him out to the barn. It is Valhalla.
Chill,
right?
Devin.
For all my Star Trek fans out there, it's Stovokor, right? Like, this is where the great warriors go to continue their wars. And look, he's not retiring. Okay,
dude, someone said it's the gulag.
It's the gulag. I love that.
Dude, it's the gulag. So does he have to 1v1 Kiarby then? Like, how does
how does that work?
But I can't. I know he's gonna come back. I know it. Like, I just believe, man. I just believe that he's not gonna retire. He's gonna come back. I want him to come back stronger than ever, better than ever, or at least at a level that he's happy with. And I want to see him on the server. He's given us too many great moments. theScore esports, you know, wouldn't be here today without the Olaf boost, which is 90% of our content.
Yeah,
I was about to say, as the team lead on top 10s, I'm gonna have to start having people put sad music over the Olaf boost. Like, it's gonna be a lot harder to stick that into every video. Like,
yeah, Hyperdrive says somebody needs to buy him back. you know.
Yeah, that's facts.
Oh no, Nico's got to go to like a buy station.
Yeah.
Get him dropping. The other thing is that in for Olaf, they have this new kid, Bimus or Bemis, I don't know. Apparently he's Lithuanian. I think he's 16 years old. He's had a couple matches under his belt, and FaZe has won them both. They've been against a Spirit and Godsent, so it's like, you know, not exactly the top 5 in the world, but still like actual teams. Imagine you're 16 years old and you're like, oh yeah, who's on my team? Oh, you know, Rain, Coltzera, Nico. Oh, okay, who are you replacing? Oh, Olaf Meister. You know, that's amazing. Like shout outs to that kid.
Some shoes to fill. All right, Colin, if Olaf Meister agreed to drop in with you, would you get in a Fortnite server?
Hell yes. Hell fucking yes, man. We would get that is it a victory royale?
It's a victory royale, yeah.
We would get the victory royale.
I think Colin might be maybe the least likely person in the office to be caught in a Fortnite server, but you heard it here first. If Olaf wants to play with him, he'd be down to play.
I mean, seems like Olaf's got time, right? We should at least get him in on Stop Our Squad.
Yeah, maybe he's taking a break to play a bunch of Fortnite.